So retrospective, well, who wants to tell me? What's a retrospective? Somebody, help me out here.
It's looking back.
Okay, it's looking back. Good. What else? Yes, Alan.
A retrospective is a tool for understanding what you just did, so when you do it again, you'll do it better.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
That was 140 characters.
That was
140.
Angeline's tweeting. So yeah, a retrospective is taking a little bit of time to pause, learn from what we just did, so that we can improve going forward, right? And so typically it takes the form of a meeting, right? You might want to do these at the end of every sprint, iteration, whatever you like to call it. I highly recommend that. It's really, really valuable. You might want to do it at the end of every release. You might want to do a retrospective after some particular incident, right? Something happened. We put some code live and it brought the servers down. Okay, well, let's hurry up and clean the mess up. And then after the mess is cleaned up, let's take a little time to do a retrospective and see if we can figure out, how did that happen? What were the events that led up to that? What were the contributing factors? How can we change the way we work so that we do better in the future? So it's all about learning. It's all about continuous improvement. As an output from a retrospective, typically you want, especially a sprint level retrospective, 1, maybe 2, things to do differently. And I recommend that you treat these as experiments, right? So we're going to try doing this differently, maybe for 2 weeks, and then make a decision. Is this new thing we're trying, is that working better than what we did before? Great, let's keep doing it. Maybe the experiment fails, right? We tried something differently, it didn't make our lives better. Okay, not much loss, we can go back to what we were doing before. So if we're going to be able to achieve this sense of continuous improvement, right? Bring this sense of wonder and exploration to the process. We kind of need to be open to it. We kind of need to be open-minded. We kind of need to be feeling creative. So I want to do a little experiment, perhaps into what not to do. So very often, when these things go sideways, they turn into little blame sessions. Anyone been at a lessons learned or a post-mortem or perhaps even a retrospective that really just turned into a big bitch fest? A big blaming session?
A root cause analysis session.
So I have problems with this, right? As soon as things turn to blame, like whose fault is it that the servers crashed, the mood changes, and unfortunately with the mood, the productivity tends to change. So I'd like to do just a short experiential thing to kind of get at what that's about. So I'd like to invite maybe, I need 4 or 5 people to come up and be blamers. Come on up, this is fun. This is the easy part. The blamer is the easy part. Come on down. Okay. So here's what we do. So blamers, if you would form a circle around our poor victim.
Let me just do like this.
Oh, that's even better. So, okay, so now our role in this, it's a silent thing, but we're just going to point the finger of blame at him. Are you ready? So 10 seconds of finger of blame.
Yeah, let's see you up. My company called that the wand of death. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so first off, thank you. And remind me your name. Raymond.
Yes.
Raymond.
Am I going to be
How did it feel? Tell me about the experience of being under the finger of blame.
Felt like work, man. You're doing a bunch of stuff, and then people blame you. There you go.
Yeah,
That's productivity.
Felt familiar.
Now, if you don't do anything, then nobody's doing that to you.
How many people have worked at that place where we don't do much because that way we don't get blamed and in trouble? We've done coaching at that company and helped them try to get over that. But seriously, how else did it feel?
I mean, of course, it's And so you become defensive.
Yeah. So you feel like open to new ideas?
Of course I'm open.
Ready to really dig in and kind of bring, like, maybe, expose your own contributions to how the servers crash so we can all talk about it?
Open up my heart.
Yeah.
Share.
Yeah.
Such a safe space.
Be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else before we move on want to experience the Fingers of Blood? I recommend it. It's if you haven't. No takers for the Finger of Blood? Kind of, yeah. Yeah. No? All right. Blamers, thank you very, very much for your assistance. So, yeah. So it's really important to avoid the finger of blame in our retrospective, right? So if we're actually going to think constructively about what to do differently, we have to stay away from that space that Raymond just got to enjoy. So, a very common agenda framework for a retrospective. I stole this straight from Agile Retrospectives, How to Make Good Teams Great by Diana Larson and Esther Derby. It's in the handout, so don't feel like you have to write it down or copy it. Highly recommend the book. 5-step agenda. Set the stage, gather data, generate insights, decide what to do, and close. Time-wise, you want to dedicate about 5% of the total time you have for your retrospective to set the stage. So 5% of 60 minutes. Who's good with the math?
3 minutes.
Is that right? 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, we got 3 minutes to set the stage. 30% of 60 minutes. Seems like it should be easier.
18 minutes.
Okay, 18 minutes for gather data. Also 18 for generate insight. 18 for decide what to do. And 3 for close. So 5% of your time for setting the stage. 30% for each of gather data, generate insight, decide what to do. 5% of your time for close. I strongly recommend time boxing these pretty tightly. The reason for that, and I'm going to use a little timer to keep us going, is that this is where you're going. Decide what to do. This is arguably the most important thing, right? Because if you're going to continuously improve, you have to do something different. It's real easy to use up all your time in the first phases and then have to rush and decide what to do. It's kind of like a waterfall project where you just keep taking time out of testing. Same concept. So we are going to set the stage. Set the stage, you want to get everybody on the same page to understand what's the goal. Right? Maybe the goal is kind of generic. We want to learn from the last iteration, do something better this iteration. Maybe the goal is more specific. Maybe we had some quality issues last iteration, and so we've got a more focused goal for our retrospective. We want to see if we can't make some improvements around quality. Real appropriate to have a tighter focused goal whenever you can. Also, in order to set the stage and get kind of the mood right, get away from that finger of blame Raymond was so nice to volunteer to be subjected to, you might want to review the retrospective prime directive, right? And so the retrospective prime directive kind of helps us to step out of blame space and kind of go, okay, we're all here to build great product. We're all here to try to make this work environment that we share better. So let's get on in that spirit. Does that make sense? So there's a number of other exercises that you can do during this part of the retrospective to kind of help set the stage, get things moving. And if you're doing regular retrospectives, I highly recommend, try different exercises. In fact, try different exercises for each of the phases. Because by doing different activities, we're kind of bringing a different viewpoint to the problem, and we're likely to come up with new and fresh solutions. Make sense? Excellent. We've got 7 seconds left. Let's enjoy them. So gathering data. As we're looking back over the time period we're retrospecting on, we want to bring as many of the facts to light as we can so that we can learn from it. It's really easy to remember what happened in the last few days. It's easy to forget what happened a week and a half ago. So we want to do a couple of activities to gather data. So with this group here, I'm a little hard-pressed because I don't think we've done a project together. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to build a timeline, 2-week timeline. But I'm going to ask each of you, think back on some project that you've been on, and think back to a particularly interesting 2 weeks during that project. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a timeline up here with a start and end label. Look at that. So the 2-week period that we're going to look back on will start, about there, and end over here. For the moment, keep the emotion out, right? So for instance, Chris wrote some really bad, buggy code. That's kind of loaded, right? The build was broken 4 times. That's kind of a more neutral, observable fact. And it makes it a little easier for folks to talk about, well, how'd the build get broken? It's maybe a little easier for me to go, well, I broke it. I was really having trouble understanding, this spring and hibernate stuff, and every time I thought it had it working, I didn't, and I broke the build. Sorry. So we've got some sticky notes flying around. We'll take about 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask folks, just write down a few things that happened during the 2 weeks of the project that you're thinking back on, and bring them up here and start popping them up on the timeline. All right, so our timeline's starting to get lots of stuff on it. Excellent. Colors on board don't match. Testing environment gets broken. Product owner lacked testicular fortitude. Iterations on information architecture. Development server wasn't working. Awesome. So now we've got a bunch of mostly objective observations about things that happened up here, right? So this is kind of the objective data, right? Things that happened, events, stuff like that. So I find that as human beings, we tend to have emotional reactions to things that are important. Does that make sense? Like the things that matter, those are the things that we tend to have strong, either positive or strong negative emotional reactions to. And so that data can very often be important to capture, because that can start to point us in the direction of, of things that we might want to pay attention to. So what I'd like to invite you to do now is we're going to come up and layer on some emotional information. So I've got some smiley face stickers. So grab some of these, and any sticky up here that you have a kind of a strong positive reaction to. Peel off a smiley face, put that on there. I have yet to find frowny face stickers. If anyone knows a good source, please tell me, because I really want them. Lacking frowny face stickers, I have these animal stickers. And so we're going to use the animal stickers for things that we have strong negative emotions to. Maybe, when that happened, I wanted to go all animal. Something like that. So we've gathered a couple of different kinds of data. And it's inspired an awesome conversation over there. It's interesting, some of the things that you'll see sometimes are things like this one. So apparently at the beginning of the sprint, we had body massage. Maybe we're looking back. I remember these days. How many people were around in the dot-com boom? Yeah, those were the good old days. We actually had massage at one place that I worked. It was pretty cool.
That might have been one of those evil body massages.
Well, yeah, you get the wrong masseuse and you walk out like more messed up than you walked in. And this was a lot of smiley faces, but it got an animal too. And it's not uncommon for some of the things that happen to get both positive and negative emotional, labels on them. And very often that makes for some very interesting discussion, and very often there's a lot of learning that happens around there. So when I'm doing this for real, with an intact team, what happens during this time, while people are up here adding stuff to the wall and adding stickies to that, is a lot of conversation. And it's interesting because you guys didn't all work together on the same project, but there was a lot of conversation, a lot of buzz going on up here, even so. And in that conversation with your intact team, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of learning getting shared, right? So yay. So we've gathered a lot of data. What other sorts of data can you think of, artifacts, things like that, you might want to have on hand for your retrospective? So we've created the timeline right in the moment. What might you bring in?
Cards.
Bring in your story cards, right? Which story cards did you work on that sprint? Absolutely. What else might you bring to your retrospective?
Burn down charts.
Burn down charts. Awesome. What else? Customer feedback. Absolutely. Bug reports, right? Where there's some bugs filed on maybe some stuff from last sprint or anything like that. Any of these artifacts that kind of you're working with day to day, bring them along, put them up on the wall. It's all data.
But what about the code itself?
Ooh, interesting. Yeah.
I like to actually point to the thing and say, well, look at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially this phase. So this phase of your retrospective is kind of like brainstorming in that all data is welcome. More information, better. Because we're going to use this as the base that we build on going forward. We're going to mine this data for actual information and learning, right? Because at this point, it's just data. It's just stuff on the wall. It doesn't really have meaning or usefulness yet. So we've got all this data. We want to start making sense of it. The timeline is a useful tool to help us gather the data because this is the way it lays it out, right? You'll notice sometimes you'll notice there's a hole and you'll think, oh, what was going on in that part of the sprint? And it helps to stimulate your memory. But now that we've gathered it, the fact that it's aligned temporally, maybe it's useful. We could do some analysis with it in that form. But the exercise that I've picked out for us to do is affinity grouping. So what we're going to do is, right now it's organized by time. Let's reorganize it by theme. So come on down. I don't know what the themes are yet. They'll emerge. Start moving stickies around and grouping ones that seem like they go together.
And may we...
So what do we have up here? So we've got good luck. Okay. Admin issues. So we have this cluster of admin issues. Things related to requirements. Infrastructure issues / capacity.
Also labeled on the bottom with a different...
Also labeled on the bottom with bugs. So maybe the people who came up with these two labels, can someone share? Tell me about that. Okay. So bugs, and in particular, is it okay if I move this up that way? Whoever put the bugs? Sure. It sounds like in particular you think a lot of them were infrastructure capacity related.
Well, at the time I was saying.
Yeah. Cool. Like it. Bad luck. Development server wasn't working. Is that luck? Maybe.
Could be infrastructure.
Yeah, maybe we want to move that over here. Maybe so. Testing. So we've got a number of issues around testing. And team time constraints. Right? So this team, looking back on our kind of imaginary composite sprint, we had some time constraint issues, some issues around testing, problems with bugs, a lot of issues around requirements, right?
Well, that's a shocker.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're finding what were the themes, right? So where we're headed to in our retrospective is decide what to do, right? We're going to be looking for something to try doing differently. And what this is starting to point us at are some areas we might choose to try to do something differently in. Does that make sense? So as a facilitator, you're kind of listening for where's the buzz, where's the energy, and helping the team to kind of see that and maybe help them to, down that road towards decide what to do. Let's decide what to do. And I'm going to hold that, but I'm going to move us forward. So one of the things I mentioned was being a little ruthless about the time boxing, because you really want to make sure you have enough time for decide what to do. So the particular exercise, so for each of these phases, there's a lot of different exercises you can do to accomplish the goal. The one that I'd like to invite us to do at this point is the mini project plan. The way this exercise works is we're going to pick maybe 3 of these areas that we think maybe we want to improve. And as facilitator, no, actually I'm not going to. I was going to constrain it. I'm not going to do that. I was going to rule out the good and bad luck, but if you guys think there's a way to improve our luck, awesome. I want to hear about it. So fire that guy. So we're going to pick 2 or 3 of these areas, break into a couple of small groups, and come up with very short little mini project plans that explain a proposed experiment we could try to make some improvement in that area. And what we're going to report out after the project plans are created. And what we're going to want is, generally, what's your experiment? What will it take to do it? How many people? How much time? Does it require some money? What's involved in carrying out this experiment? Some of the particulars. Who is going to do what by when? Right? Because if we're coming out with an action item for decide what to do, we want to put a fine point on it. Who's going to do what by when? And then finally, how will we know, when will we decide if the experiment was successful and we want to continue doing it this new way, or go back to the way we were doing things before? So, I think what we'll do is just invite people to kind of come up, and if you can identify, if you feel strongly about you've got an idea about how we might improve our testing, what we might do about admin issues, maybe some way we can improve the way we handle requirements, come on up, grab the sticky, and space out a little bit and kind of just walk around with the sticky and try to gather people around you. So we're going to just self-organize. So come on down, pick your topic, form your groups, and come up with your project plans. Team bugs and infrastructure issues. What's your proposal?
All right, so we saw a few post-its, I think, for broken builds. So our proposed solution for that would be set up a dedicated server box to do continuous integration builds. So that would happen every day, and so that would take care of that one. And for bugs that occur, we'd want to encourage pair programming and pair-based reviews before committing to source. And in addition to that, have intermittent review meetings, which I think we decided on what the time period that those would recur on, but we definitely want to do that as well. And enforce the writing of unit tests for found bugs. So,
okay, and so I'm going to call out this. This is super, 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 super common. And what I mean by this is, we've got 5 fixes. we're going to try. And they're all awesome, by the way. I want to be on that team that's doing all that stuff. 'Cause that's all the right stuff.
Just pick one.
But yeah, the spirit of the retrospective is better to pick one small experiment that we know we can do, we know we can implement it and implement it well, as opposed to, hey, we found 5 areas that we want to address, let's try to attack all 5. And the reason is the team that makes a little bit of progress every iteration they find one thing to make better and they make it better, is going to have this positive momentum. Right? Does that make sense? Like, hey, we do these retrospectives and they always like lead to something that we do better and this is good. Whereas the team that tries like 5 things, even if they succeed with 1 and they fail with the other 4, there's just something about it that it feels, yeah. So if you had to pick one of those.
I was going to say that the build server would be a sort of a separate project. No one in development would really have to think too much about that.
It's sort of, it's either you set it up and then it's done, basically.
But certainly,
So just do that. That's number 1.
That-
Just stick with that as your goal.
That's
That's
even
the
an
first goal.
auxiliary thing.
Yeah, because I think you need, because we definitely got 2 categories of bugs.
But
One is
for
broken builds.
but
and
for
one's
number
actual
1
bugs.
to focus on going with pair programming and doing the peer reviews before committing is definitely one thing to.
Sure.
Well, it's
So I'm going to be tough. Pick one.
okay. Pair programming.
Okay, I like it. So pair programming.
Right there.
So pair programming. So what would be who's going to do what by when for our experiment?
So we would just start as soon as the next sprint
How many
starts.
pairs are there going to be? Is everybody going to be paired?
Yeah, see, the companies that I was at, that wouldn't actually work because you've got some developers who just aren't going to do pair programming. And that's a common problem with pair programming.
The idea is that if you have more junior people who are less experienced with your code base, you're typically maybe creating more of these unintentional bugs, and then those people would get paired up with a more senior person as well to work with on.
So there we go. So maybe we create like a pairing chart for how long do we want to run the experiment?
Maybe.
So one iteration. So maybe we come up with a pairing chart. Someone would create it. Maybe a few people would throw in together to create it. We'll schedule who's going to pair with who, which days over the next iteration. That would be an awesome who's going to do what by when, right? So, Bob's going to create the chart, or Bob and Tony are going to create the chart together. And then how would we decide if this is working or not? When would we decide and how?
Well, suppose we probably have some type of reporting on how many bugs we had, and then take a look. Maybe we had less.
And also if code reviews are already happening intermittently, we can figure, this is taking down on the minutia that we get caught up in these meetings that only happen so often.
Cool. So our criteria might be: did we lower our bug counts, and are we having less of these?
Yeah, maybe code reviews are more efficient and less nitpicky.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some criteria for deciding how well did that work out for us.
And we're not deciding by whether the pairs are actually happy working with each other.
Maybe we do. Maybe we do.
If the bug count goes down, are we sticking with it even if the guys hate each other?
Yeah. So this is the sort of thing that the group wants to figure out. How are we going to make that decision? So so pair programming. All right. So team requirements.
Yeah.
Let's hear what you got.
We went with feedback from the product owner, specifically after each feature is complete, the developer who worked on it needs to sit down with the product owner and get their feedback, demonstrate the feature, and then get basically a thumbs up or a thumbs down if it's acceptable or not.
Like it. So who's going to do what by when?
Well, I guess a good trial run for this would be 2 sprints.
Okay.
Every developer on the team really needs to have a hand in it, and the product owner needs to buy in too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to happen throughout the sprint.
Good. And then how are we going to decide if we want to keep doing this at the end of the experiment?
This might be hard to put numbers to, but since we had a lot of complaints about incomplete requirements, nebulous requirements, maybe the number of complaints about that might decrease. another way to measure it might be fewer features kicked back from a product owner back into development again. Fewer bugs, perhaps.
Yeah, and so I can imagine, like, how are we going to decide being, well, we'll hold a meeting, maybe we'll even schedule it, like, short one, right, to decide do we keep doing this or not. And in fact, a fair number of teams will run their experiments for the length of a sprint and build a little bit of time at the beginning of the next retrospective to decide, do we keep doing last retrospective's experiment or not? So I can imagine saying, hey, at our next sprint retrospective, you know, we'll do a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of vote about it. We'll have a little discussion. We'll decide if we want to keep doing this. Yeah, I like it.
What does this have to do with requirements?
It's the problem is the PO is not involved enough in expressing what the requirements are, and they need to get in the loop with the developers to actually clarify the requirements. Because the PO is the guy who's making the requirements. The developers are delivering the requirements.
And
that may be true too, but that's not what it says there.
Yeah.
And something I like about this, actually, that this demonstrates pretty well. So maybe the product owner is in the room and in the retrospective. Very often a good thing.
Why wouldn't it be a good thing?
You know,
Why would they not be there? They're chained to the steel ring in the floor in the corner, I think.
If all is well. I have known teams where the relationship between product owner and developers is the development team is not quite as healthy as one would like. And part of the spirit of the retrospective is you bring the people who it's going to be safe in the room to have the conversation. Let's imagine for the moment, just for the sake of imagining, that the relationship here isn't so healthy. This product owner's kind of a swoop in, swoop out. He's not really available. He didn't even bother to come to the retrospective.
Then he's not a product owner. That's
Well, he's not
direct.
He's not a very good one.
Violation of the definition of the product.
So, forgot to mention he was fired. We can fire him.
So he should be fired. And how do you get away from that ring? I want to
So
know.
it's a typical corporation where you don't have that. Yeah. So what I like about this in that case is the team has come up with something they can do. Right? The team can, after the feature is developed, go back to the product owner and hold them down and do the demo and get the sign off, the thumbs up or thumbs down. And it's really important, coming out of a retrospective, that the action item you come up with, the experiment that the team is going to run, is something that is within their control to do. Right? So if, for the sake of argument, we have this bad product owner that Alan's going to hunt down and kill, this is something the team can do. Right? So a less useful action item might be require the product owner to be on site every day. Well, unless the team actually has the authority to somehow require that, it's not a very good action item to come out of a retrospective. True story, when I first started doing this stuff years and years ago, the first team that I worked with, bless their souls, they were very patient with me. We kept coming out of our retrospectives. We didn't even have that word at that point. We called them postmortems or something. We kept coming out of these with our top thing being, we need to hire more testers. Every time. Except we didn't have authority to hire people. Right? So I would take this thing up to upper management and say, hey, we had this meeting and we talked about everything that happened and we really need more testers. And upper management would say, yes, we'll take that under advisement, right? And every group in the company was clamoring for more testers, and they weren't getting them neither. And by letting the team come up with this action item over and over, instead of the team moving forward and feeling empowered, they started feeling like less and less loved. You know what I mean? They were feeling like, this company, hey, we're doing all this great work, and we're kicking out this great product. They won't even give us a gosh darn tester. So come up with things that it's within the team's power to do. So what we would do, if this were a real retrospective, is some sort of voting and decision-making process around which of these three proposed experiments are we going to enter into, right? We'd make that decision, and then we would enter into closing. So the purpose of closing is, first off, wrap up, make sure everybody's on the same page about what we decided to do. Right? So closing is a real good time to reaffirm, okay, we decided to, do this feedback thing where we go and get the product owner's thumbs up or thumbs down. Everybody knows what their part is in it, get agreement on that. Okay, good. We know who's going to do what by when. We're ready to move forward. And then the final bit of closing is, I like the analogy to surgery. Right? So a retrospective is a little bit like surgery. You're creating the space where you kind of open the patient up, right? You open the team up and you start mucking about with like some really sensitive inner workings of the team, right? Because very often the team dynamics come up, how we're interacting, how's our code quality, what are our development practices. People get really sensitive about this stuff, but it's important. It's the stuff that matters, right? And so you open things up and you go in and you make some change, right? Excise the cancerous bad practice that you had. And then it's important to kind of close the patient back up so that they can kind of go back out into the world safely. So with your team, one of the ways you do this is some little activity to kind of let everybody go, okay, we did that hard work, now we're done, and now it's time to move on. So one of the exercises that I really like for this is the appreciations exercise. And this one's real simple. When you feel an appreciation, comes to you, you share it. And the format is I appreciate whoever you're appreciating for whatever you're appreciating them for. And if they're in the room, a real good thing to do, like if you're getting appreciated, is to just say, thank you. And appreciations, it's not a time for discussion or debate. It's just people expressing kind of how they feel, right? So it's a good time to appreciate something that happened during the sprint, maybe even something that happened in the retrospective. So, and it's definitely not a go around the room and everybody do an appreciation exercise, right? Because in order for these to have any value at all, they've got to be really heartfelt. And if you know you got to do one, yeah, So,
I really appreciate the weather.
Yeah, exactly. You get that kind of stuff. So let's give it a try. It's kind of like when something comes to you, share it. And it's like popcorn. We'll know when it stopped popping, and that's when it'll be done. So I appreciate Alan for being here and being willing to constructively stir things up.
So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
And so the floor is open.
I appreciate Yuri for bringing up the unusual solution about appreciating problems.
I appreciate that fellow for being so transparent in his hiring and firing process.
It's a tough lesson. No more foreign talking.
I appreciate Alan for reminding us that not all bad news are bad.
I appreciate the organizers and the guys who brought the pizza.
Woo-hoo.
I appreciate you guys coming and taking your evening out of your busy lives and hanging out here and sharing knowledge.
I appreciate the whole Blame team for making me a better programmer.
Thank you. So thank you very much from Steve and I.
Thanks.